did I did something?
Nathan, you're muted.
Yep, sorry, it like hid the mute button, so I couldn't find where to unmute myself. Everybody hear me now? Can just see some head nods.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you for that introduction, and those are ground rules that we like to echo within all of our meetings as well. So I appreciate that. My name is Nathan Frazee. I'm the project manager from the Boston Parks Department, overseeing improvements to the Dudley Town Common. Oops, is that transition for you all? Yes.
Yeah, now we're on the project team. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So again, when you share this out, here's my contact information at the top. We have contracted with Crowley Cottrell as our landscape architecture firm. They have both Naomi and JP leading on their end. I, as well, in my community meetings, I oftentimes have our department's outreach coordinator information in case there's other items in the area for other parks that maybe there's issues, as well as the ONS representative. So looking at our schedule, we held our first community meeting on March 16th. Unfortunately, it was very similar today that we had a kind of a cold spell, and that was a very beautiful day. So we only had 3 people attend that meeting. We didn't feel like that was sufficient outreach, even though the people that did participate were from the food project, as well as Councilor Fernandez Anderson's office. So we were able to have a much more kind of intimate just conversation as opposed to a presentation. So we heard a lot of how the food project used the site, as well as Kalamu's experience from when he was at BSNI and ran events over there at the site. So this schedule is very fluid right now. Our typical process is a 3-meeting process, and then we go into construction documents. Rather than continuing to only get a few voices to the table, I'm coming to DSNI tonight. I'm hoping I'm going to try and attend your all's annual meeting on June 16th. We're going to have a table at the food projects farmers market. That's their first date, and then the meetings following that we're going to adjust based on how many voices we can get and the input we can get. But right now, I have an estimate of about $880,000 for renovations at the 2 sites. And if we stick to the schedule, I anticipate opening next summer. So just kind of some quick elements that go into park design within our department. First is the City of Boston priorities. Then we have our parks and recreation goals. We have safety guidelines and regulatory guidelines that we need to adhere to. And then we have community input like tonight. Oops, wrong direction. So just really quickly to kind of go through the City of Boston priorities. That's to expand walkable access in parks, addressing equity, climate resiliency, health, and then building housing and community in our neighborhoods. Within the Parks Department, our goals are accessibility and availability to all, creating diverse, balanced, and efficient mixes of use, having meaningful and inclusive community engagement, having parks that are adaptive and resilient landscapes, and then promoting connection both in the landscape but to the community. So now I'm going to get into the actual physical conditions of the site. So as I was saying earlier, the really unique thing about this is that even though it's one named park, it's actually 2 different separated parcels. We have the northern parcel that's located at the corner of Dudley and Hamden Street, and then the southern parcel at Blue Hill Ave in Dudley. So we looked at kind of a land use and connectivity. We zoomed out these dash lines here. You can see the walkability. So if you're at this location, how walkable is it? I think within a 10-minute walk to get around. So one thing you'll see is there actually is a decent amount of green, parks or gardens and things within this walkable distance. the one thing that's of note is that to the page right of this, a lot of that blue is commercial and industrial development. And I'm sure out of anybody, this community is aware of development pressures that we're seeing here, and that a lot of this land use is currently changing. So we need to think about what are the long-term impacts of this site, making sure the site works right now for the community, but also the potential shifts that may be happening. So zooming into the northern site, again, Dudley Street and Hamden Street. The biggest factor that we noticed is really how compartmentalized both sites are. So we created a diagram just looking at kind of the different uses and different elements within the park. And you can see it's not open. It's very much each has its elements. So right along Dudley Street here, you have the bus shelter, the bus stop, along with the cantilever shelters, and then the bollards. At the corner, you have the monument and park signage. You have some stair entrances. Along Hamden Street, you have a steep slope with some stairs and some planting. Then once you get into the park, you have some segmented lawn panels, a central central paved plaza. You have the globe bench at the back of the site. And then in this, you have an actually really neat seat wall that we'll look at a little bit more. So looking at the issues that we as designers, as we did our walkthrough, right now you can see, I think that's me standing there. You can see there's quite a bit of settlement that's happened in this area. So we're going to try and get some test pits to see what's happening below the surface to cause that. But there's a lot of tripping hazards here. All of the pavement changes in different elevations are unsafe to traverse the area. If you're waiting for the bus, the cantilever shelter really doesn't provide much shelter, if any. You can see the paving here is in disrepair. The globe bench at the back here really actually kind of blocks some of the sight lines that you could maybe look out from the park. The quote wall here has a really beautiful quote and beautiful mosaic, but it looks like there's some settlement issues happening there it's no longer plumb. And then there's signs that there was a more extensive planting at one point that's been cut back, either because plants were dying or maybe a safety and sightline issue. But then you have plants that are growing, invasive plants that are growing through the fence and causing damage and other issues there. So what I had mentioned earlier about some of the kind of cultural and really like hidden gems in these parks, you have these really neat mosaic inlet benches. You have a salamander, and then I think that's a whale. But then that mosaic carries throughout the park. You have that in that quote wall. And then these are in the inlays in the concrete bollards at the bus stop. So we want to make sure those elements, if they're important to the community, we retain those or give them new life so that they continue to be a presence in the park. So one of the things we had shown in our meeting was just some precedent images, and these aren't anything that we're explicitly proposing in the park. It's just to give some sites that maybe had similar characteristics, whether it's backdrop seating element or slope planting or inclusive benches, things like that. It was just to spark conversation and get people to just start to discuss and see what they potentially want to see here. So moving to the southern site, you have Dudley Street here and then Blue Hill Ave at the bottom. Again, very similar in style and characteristic as the northern sites, very compartmentalized. You have the monument clock at the corner. You have the open plaza. Then you have a set of steps that go up. Then you have a higher elevation from that. You have a stage. You have this very kind of back of house lawn. And then you have these kind of segmental segregated tree pits that are happening. So this site, more so than the other one, the level of topography or steps that are there really, an able-bodied person can traverse the site somewhat well. But anybody in a mobility device to get to some of the higher elements really has to kind of walk a maze to get up to the stage or behind the stage. So what we're looking at, or what we'd like to discuss, is that something important? Could we maybe work on eliminating some of these grade changes so that the park itself is much more navigable for all users and not just the people without mobility issues. So again, looking at some of the site images here, you can see a lot of the stairs, whether it's intended stairs with a handrail or these concrete block walls that serve as walls, but are also could be used as stairs. We have some good trees in this site, which we certainly want to preserve, but they definitely have outgrown the tree pits that they're in. So, can we move some of these grates around or address the paving issues to make sure those trees continue to thrive and provide canopy? The back path here, it's certainly seen better days. It's had some overgrowth issues. It tends to look a little bit unmaintained and perhaps not inviting for people to come in. The trellis structure, similar to the other site, it's showing its age. It's faded. Has some rust issues. So what we want to hear is are those components important to the community? Do we see those in the next iteration of this park? Or is that elements that have kind of lived their life and now it's time to think about potentially moving or altering in a way that gives them more life and cleans them up for future use? Similar to the mosaics in the other site, what the pavers here have the similar etchings as the clock tower. So you see these different words and graphics etched in the stone, and then some mosaic elements as well. So again, it's those little surprises you find in the park. Again, that's what drives the community. That's what shows the culture of the site, and we want to make sure we're preserving that. So looking at some precedent images here, knowing that this one tends to be a bit more of an open plaza for events and gathering, you'll notice the Roxbury branch library there as a precedent image of, how can we do paving and seating and stairs all in a really elegant way? Is it something that we want to connect up to the library so it has similar characteristic along that corridor? Here's some ways of this is down in this down near the aquarium. How can we do accessible paving right up to those trees so those trees continue to thrive, but we can also make sure that our park users can navigate the site well. So, and then as I mentioned earlier, one thing you'll notice is that we didn't show any renderings or proposed plans tonight. We're really not at that phase of the project. We're still in the information gathering and discussion. So we want to hear back from the community about, what they think's working well, what they would like to see here. And then once we feel like we have a good amount of that information and input, we'll come back to the community with concepts at that point. What I will say is we have a project page for this. Again, because we haven't had much input yet, it's not a lot actually populating that page. But this presentation, as well as the video recording from the previous meeting, is on that. And again, we're going to be at the farmers market with a table on June 16th. So we're looking forward to getting feedback from there. But so certainly we can, if anybody wants more information or anything, they can continue to follow the project at that website. So with that, I'm going to return it to Renee, and if there's any questions, and I can certainly flip back to any slides or images or anything that people want to speak to.
Thank you, Nathan. So I guess at this point, we want to open it up to anyone here that's joined us to feel free and just raise your hand and share your comments, impressions, questions to get us going. See Julia.
Hi, everyone.
Did you have a comment, Julia, or a question about?
Just a comment. Nathan, hi and welcome. Whose idea was it to be renovated? Thank you. I thought it was a good idea for. Is it the city that's doing it? Cause I'm sorry, I didn't hear who was doing it.
Sure. So I'm from the Parks Department, and this project has been in our capital planning to address some of the issues that we have on it, particularly in the north site. There's a lot of accessibility issues because there's so much settling in there.
Yeah.
So I think when that was brought to our attention, you can't really look at one site without addressing the other. So that's why we're looking at both, but the project would be through the city. Yeah.
Thank you. That was very nice.
Thanks, Julia. Kirsten, Chantel, or Renee, any comments, thoughts, questions for Nathan?
Yeah, I have a question. Is related to you know, like we're in our office in, you know, East Cottage and Dudley Street. The MBTA just installed a new shelter, right? This past week. Actually, they installed it in one side, and then I don't know, maybe they, you know, like mess it up. They move it to the other side. Are you, Nathan, are in conversation with the MBTA? I know that both sides, I think, are bus stops, right? Like for the 15, and depend if I think in the other corner is 45 too, to include the shelter. If you have been in one, my question is, have you been in conversation with the MBTA? And if you know, the T is in you know, planning to install a shelter in those location, and if those shelters could be included in the plan that you're designing.
Yeah, so I think one thing that, especially on that northern site, in order for, I think what will drive that conversation is, one, are we keeping the kind of overhead structures that we have there? In the past experience, the MBTA has, they base their shelters on riding data. So how many riders are actually getting on or off at individual stops. And sometimes that's why you'll see they shift, is because the ridership will change a little bit. And so they relocate shelters. So typically what in previous projects, I've raised the community's desire for shelters at our stops, and they check their data to see if that's, you know, if that's within their threshold to warrant it or not. I have not reached out to them yet, but I certainly can as part of this.
Yeah, that's really important. You know, I've been at that north side, and I just, you know, when you were starting your presentation, you call those structures sort of shelters or trellis or whatever.
Yeah.
Because I've been there when it's like, yeah, these things don't do anything for, you know, when it's raining.
Not at all. Not at all. They don't even do much for sun either, right?
Right. So I always thought these are just decoration on, you know, on both sides, right? Both the north and the south side. They're nice. I mean, I think, like you said, they're showing their wear. I mean, I don't think you showed the part that has the maybe you did, the clock. I think the clock was a really cool feature on the south side, but you know, they're starting, I think some of them are falling down, like falling over. So yeah, I mean, I think this is timely. Like you said, there's a lot of sort of the sidewalk is off, you know, so it's a little dangerous there. But I think it would be useful to have, you know, the MBTA consider, maybe that's a different approach on our end, right? To just say, you know, we need those, and you know, we should get them in our neighborhood. You know, I think that, like, I could also say that on the north side, I've never gone into that space very far. because I just, again, I feel like, there isn't anything here, right? And so, I think that we need to think about, what would allow more people to feel like there's something here for them. Whether it's, redoing the north side so that maybe it speaks to that skater, community. The Vine Street Inn is right down the street, right, like less than a block over. And I know they have a playground right next to their space, but I'm assuming that they also serve young or teenagers that may, that could use some space for programming for that population. So I think it would be good to connect with them. At St. Patrick's, the coffee hours are always downstairs, but even it'd be great if they would think of that, space also as another area where some of those coffee hours could happen, and more like of their, just events in general, because it does get less use. And as you know, there's homeless people there, right, with their tents, and I mean, they sweep and they do, but yeah, I think that's part of what keeps folks away. My sort of thinking would be like, yeah, if those on the north side, if those trellises need to be removed to to sort of include a shelter, a bus shelter, I think that would, I'd be okay with that. But I like the spatial sort of feeling that it gives to the park by having those structures, sort of like it frames them nicely. I'll stop there.
No, those are all similar feelings than I've had when going there. It's oftentimes, again, at that northern site there's an individual that tends to inhabit the back corner. I think that some of the vegetation helps shield that. Some of the topography helps shield that as well. So I think those are, we want to make sure everybody has a safe place to live and have their needs met, but that typically cannot be in our park just because of the safety concerns. So we want to make sure it's open enough that park users can feel comfortable to come in there as well. In terms of, I hadn't thought of skaters, but I think that's a great conversation, and certainly a demographic that oftentimes is overlooked, or it tends to be like, well, there's a basketball court, right? But that's a small group of that, teenage user. So skating is an interesting one to think about.
Thank you. Chantel, you have your hand up. Please go ahead.
Hello. I mean, I think it's a great idea that they are fixing the park. The only thing I would say is maybe a stationary chess table, something like that. And just a tad pushback on making the bus stops nice, only because when you make them too nice, they sleep at the bus stops. So if you heat it and you have this wonderful, shelter set up, they sleep at the bus stop. And then, the people that need the bus stop, they don't want to stand in there because it smells like urine. That's the only thing about the bus stop, making it too nice. But other than that, I think it's a great idea.
Thank you. I think I just had my 5-year-old enter the meeting as well.
Thank you.
I'm in a meeting. I'll finish up and then I'll come.
One of the things that you mentioned, one of the things that you mentioned also was the budget, right? And so, maybe again, this is something that can be discussed further, but I was thinking just, once people have made suggestions for what should go on the design, then maybe DSNI can also play a role in applying for CPA funds
Mhm.
to fund specific pieces to that design.
Yeah, so again, I will say, so our budget here was initially put together more or less as like looking at this as maintenance and bringing the park back up to its safe traversable location, making sure there aren't rusty things. If we identify a good amount of changes that need to be made and we need to address the budget issues, we have avenues we can look at that. We can certainly campaign for additional funds, things like that, to try and make sure we're doing this right and not having the budget be something that's at the detriment of the project.
I like the images that you showed from the library, the Roxbury branch, where with that sort of canopy, the wood canopy.
Mhm.
I mean, I think that's kind of nice. That could be like a new element. I don't know what other folks feel, but maybe thinking of a different sort of color scheme, right? The current green and sort of like maroon, or what is it? I mean, it seems very colonial, but maybe think about like maybe brighter, happier colors. Rene, you also have a comment. I saw your head.
Yeah, no, I'm wondering if like if you have getting feedback regarding the south side, and if it's like if you have heard about preserving some of the stage like like architecture. I don't know how to call it, but I know that like we have been participating with the food project on the like farmers market. So like have like the design that give the opportunity for local organization to have those type of activities, right? Like just curious to hear that.
Yeah, the farmers market, the one thing they were talking about is the open plazas is the most beneficial to them, because that's what we were talking. Do they utilize the multi levels in there? And basically the feedback we got was that for the most part no, because one, it can be dangerous, right? If they have people all of a sudden up higher shopping and then there's a drop off right behind them. So they tended to like it more open and a little bit more multi-use for their events. One of the things we heard from Kalamu was that years ago we used to do more events here anyways. I think there was some exercise groups and everything that happened. I think the intent of and what he had said, the intent of that southern site was that it had music and it had lights inside of it, and so it could be like an actual stage for events and everything. But the problem is the noise there, right? You have a bus stop right there, you have traffic at both sides stopped at a red light, so it's really hard to be able to hear an event or a stage type of thing like that. Which is why, not that it has the overhead lights and everything like that, but at Mary Hannon, we built that amphitheater stage in the corner there. So the goal is that could replicate. So if the community does want to do those types of events, there's a little bit more secluded, a little bit quieter location for that to actually take place. So I haven't heard any real desire to necessarily keep those pieces. I will say I did get Lorraine Payne Wheeler emailed and had some questions about how that fits in within the Shirley Square Historic District and whether some of those elements are in conflict with a historic district as well. So there's that element, and I think the desire to potentially declutter. One of the things I reached out, he's no longer with the Parks Department, but he works with the Friends of the Public Garden, was the project manager that worked on the maintenance of this when it was initially completed in the 90s. And they had annual maintenance for painting this. And then obviously we ran into recession and budgets cut and elements got, funding got reduced. So those annual maintenance things dried up, but it just shows the level that maintaining something like that really took. And I don't know if we've ever really returned to a state where we could afford to annually paint something as elaborate as the again, I struggle for a good word for it, the architectural elements there. But again, if there's a strong desire from the community, we can certainly, look at that and see what we can do to make sure it lasts. But so far, I have not heard a strong desire for those.
Thank you.
I think Julia is raising her hand.
A couple of years back, the Emerson School and the St. Patrick's School, but St. Patrick's School closed. I was wondering if the GSNI Charter School, if they use the stage to do the Christmas tree lighting with Santa, because we used to do it. We used to bring the kids and they used to go over there and sing, and then Santa, hot chocolate with donuts and stuff. Do they still use it, the GSNI Charter School? Do you know?
I do not. If I can scroll to the very top, let's see, my cover image has the remnants of the Christmas tree in the corner there. That's the base that the tree sticks into. So I know the tree goes up there. I don't know if they still do.
Because they usually bring a big tree, and then I don't know who, the city brings it and then lit it up, and then used to sing with Santa and a whole bunch. And that's why it's a clock with the tree and everything. And then the kids will go up the stage and sing and a whole bunch. I don't know if the GSNI Charter School, if they still do it.
I don't know. We can certainly check and see. I'll look into that.
I know a couple years ago, before the pandemic, I did see that like handmade ornaments by probably kids were hung on the tree. So I don't know if it's part of the trolley tour for the tree lightings or if it's just done by Public Works, but it's something nice that could be brought back, hopefully.
Yeah.
So Nathan, I didn't know that these were painted, the structures. I just thought that they were made from some kind of like special like molding, or like the metal itself was like mixed with something. Okay, so these are.
Yeah, they're a painted metal, but again, so that's what I'm saying. Like with play equipment, everything, or other metals in parks, one component that we can do that ensures they stay painted in a good quality is powder coating. That's when it's actually dipped, it's completely covered. It's usually done in a shop. It's not done out in the field. That seals everything, keeps it nice, preserves it for a long time. The only way that can really be damaged is if something actually hits it and breaks through that shell. So what we'll look for feedback from the community is, are components of this important that we want to keep? Maybe we could simplify this. Right now you have, can you see my cursor here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so a lot of these, the silhouettes and everything are pretty extensive. That may be difficult, but maybe it's something we just simplify, right? Maybe maybe retain some of the columns. We can retain the clock and we can just simplify it and make sure that it's done in a nice, high quality way, that it lasts a lot longer. Still has a lot of the character, the elements. It's just a more maintainable structure. So that's one thing. You can start to see a little bit of the some of the it looks like these are mostly music notes, but some of the etchings that I was showing in the stone, like the sailboats, those are actually on some of these pieces as well. So they were all done together. So we don't want to lose it completely, but we also, want to get direction from the community on what they want to see preserved.
And I think that some of the pavers right there, there must have been like some kind of campaign, like to buy a paver, because some of them are like neighbors' names, right? Family names and so on. So I mean, I don't have that history if this was done in the 90s.
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't able to find any documentation of why that has. I think some of it is the project manager was our chief engineer at the time, who I know that everybody tells me kept meticulous notes. I think they're paper notes, so it's a deep dive into filing cabinets, and I'm going to find that hidden folder that's going to unlock all of these questions and everything that we have. But I've yet to find that yet. So.
Okay. I don't see anybody else. Does anybody else have a question, comment about the ideas presented? Welcome, Maria. So Nathan, I was thinking like Julia mentioned, like there are some schools right nearby, and I think that it would be great to figure out how to engage them about how this can serve some of their sort of open space, sort of recreation needs as well, right? Because I think that's what's going to really add value, to just know that it has multiple users, right?
Right.
So I would encourage, like talking to folks at Mount Pleasant, at the Vine Street Community Center, at the charter school, what would get them to use that space.
Certainly.
And I even think the Mason kids went, and I think, I don't know if my memory is serving me correctly, this and the one this one I think is connected to the Emerson. If you look at the Emerson, there's a little, when you go, before it was Emerson School, as you go to the Dudley Street, at the entrance at the on Dudley Street that meets with Landon Street, there's a little connection that has the sign right here with you said paper people, whatever it's called.
Silhouettes, yeah.
Yeah.
And then when you go and look on the floor, and we did, the teachers and the kids, we did our hands on the floor. If you look at it, I think because it was Mayor Menino, I think. Ask around, Nathan, and then you'll see. I think there was a connection. I'm not 100% sure.
Sure. Yeah, I'll see what I can find.
Adalberto Teixeira should be able to help you. Something like that.
Right.
Don't, if I'm wrong, sorry.
No, certainly. No worries.
But, thank you, though.
Thank you. And again, I apologize that I'm looking down. I'm writing this all down so I can, and I'm also Googling to make sure I get the full names of all of these as well. Perfect. Okay. Well, I'll flip real quick again. That my name's Nathan Frazee. There's my contact information is going to be on this as well. There's my email as well as my phone number. So what I do in all of my meetings is if anybody did not feel comfortable speaking for whatever reason, they certainly can feel free to email me directly, and I'll make sure I incorporate that into any notes I took or feedback I present for my designers.
I have one question for you and also for Renee. So at the upcoming annual meeting, when you say you join us, what would that be with some kind of table presentation? Maybe those sticky pads that sort of encourage people to sort of give comment on some of the sort of the core pieces that you're looking at, that may also be useful.
Yeah, all of the above. And we're already going to have a table and some graphics and boards for engagement at the farmers market. So that's easy to replicate for the later in the month for your annual meeting, which is similar to what I had done for the Mary Hannon meeting. We had the sticky notes and we let kids use Sharpies and or markers on the plans and everything like that. So yeah, I anticipate all of that. My designers are also currently working on getting some banners made, and we're going to hang those banners at each of the site. It's going to have a link back to the project page, so that way, if you may not be attending, our meetings or DSNI meetings, but you're just hopping on a bus there, be able to glance over and see that we have, these meetings occurring, and they can engage that way. The other thing they're working on is, and I don't hold me to this because it may not come to fruition, but we're trying to get some sort of survey, a brief survey. So it's not going to be, we're not asking a lot, but some sort of survey that we can have people engage that way as well. So, but I certainly want to be continued, the communication with DSNI to make sure whatever we can do at that annual meeting to one, fit into the programming you guys already have for that, but also ensure that we're getting good feedback.
Just your final comments kind of triggered other things for me, so I'm gonna just
No, great.
But one of them was because I think that there's something that there's a need for the two places to be framed but also to be connected, right? So maybe there is a way of having, you were talking banners, but those like the banners that we have on streets, right?
Mhm.
Maybe there's a way of being able to put flags, right, or some kind of banners that sort of, again, have the name, right? Because maybe that's what people need to know, that it's like the Dudley Town Common, and that should be the part of the image and the branding. And then the other piece, which is sort of I think an issue across the city, is the question about whether it would make sense to use part of the north side as a dog park, right?
Mhm.
To sort of manage the dog poop in the neighborhood.
Right.
So that'll be up to folks, to consider, but just a thought.
Certainly. Yeah, and again, we'll put that to the community to see the input on that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.